As a kid, what was the creepiest, most WTF thing you ever noticed about another kid's family? My friend's family decided we should all watch a movie. His sister wanted to choose, so she opened the cabinet to reveal that their entire movie collection, 100% of what was available to watch, were Don Knotts movies. I didn't even know there were so many. It was weird. This one is my favorite so far because it's so random. Got another. When a friend of mine was young, starting at probably age 9 through 16, his punishment when he really screwed up was kneeling on uncooked rice in the dark. His parents would make him go to the bathroom, spread some uncooked rice on the tile floor, turn off the lights and make him kneel on it. They'd check every few minutes to make sure he was kneeling. He got in trouble for the usual dumb kid stuff, but also for accidents. Once he dropped a glass pitcher, just slipped from his hands. Total accident. His mom told me to go home because it was time to kneel on rice. This is old school. My family used to do this. On a school trip in primary school, a little 9-year-old girl started hysterically crying because she was worried that her dad would do something to her little brother and mum while she wasn't there to look after them. Oh, that's horrible. Poor kids. This did not happen to me directly, but to my BFF who was traumatized by it. We were about 12 years old. BFF stayed over at a mutual friend's house. She woke up to friend's stepfather attempting to molest friend and friend saying, "Please, number, not tonight." The next day friend told her mom because molestation was going on a while and escalating. Police called. My BFF had to give a statement. Butthole was promptly divorced and went to jail. Rage, but also happy crap got done. When I was about 9, I became friends with a brother and sister of a family who was the filthiest slobs ever. They really lived like pigs. The parents were alcoholics and just sat around all day playing radio bingo and rolling cigarettes. One time, the youngest brother, who was probably around 5 years old, pulled down his diaper. Yes, he wore diapers at that age, and started taking a crap on the living room floor. I pointed it out, but their reaction was like, "Oh, he does that all the time," like it was completely normal. WTF. I worked in a corporate restaurant for 6 years. In these 6 years, we had 4 kids just take a crap right under the table while the families were eating. No apologies, just a pleasant surprise left for our poor bus staff. When I was 12, I had this friend. We had a sleepover once for his birthday. The next morning his older sister, 15/16, wandered round all morning in just a vest top and thong. None of the family said anything to her, like this was normal. She also made a point of bending over in front of us, then would be like, "What you looking at, pervs?" I had a friend when I was 16/17 who would walk around the house, sit down and have dinner with her parents in a bra and a thong. It seemed wrong to me to wear a thong around your dad. Friend's dad was a nudist, never wore clothes. She had a sleepover for her birthday, and although we didn't see him that night, when we woke up he had zero qualms about walking into a lounge full of 11 plus 7-year-old girls with his dong and balls out. Maybe not the worst, but I couldn't and still can't understand why he didn't make an exception for just that day at least. Christ, my parents are nudist and they would be covered when my friends were over. Common freaking manners. Though once we were all young adults, they just were their semi-naked selves. They warned everyone that at night the clothes come off and it's your own fault if you get an eye full of 58 yo wang. When I was in preschool, we were all given a printout of a coloring book. It was an Eskimo, so I colored mine in and made his face sorta brown. You know, because it was an Eskimo. When we were done, the teacher helped us hang them up, and I saw that only me and the one Mexican kid in the class had made our Eskimos brown. The rest of the white kids had made little pink-faced Eskimos with blonde hair. The kid who sat next to me pulled me aside and told me that I needed to hide mine and not show it to my parents, because they wouldn't love me anymore if they saw I colored a non-white Eskimo. I cried, told my parents about it that night, and they told me to just stop being friends with the kid because he wasn't nice. It wasn't until years later that I figured out the kid wasn't just being a dong. His parents were racist as crap and he was legit concerned for my well-being, because he probably thought all families were like his. I was shocked to learn that not all parents slap their kids around. Yesterday one of my friends was telling me about how her mom punched her in the face and it was bleeding, and how she once got in a fist fight with her mom and she, as in my friend, won. She was saying this so casually. It was so weird. There's some weird stuff going on in that household. I have concerns about this happening in my family. My nephew is an only child, and since he was about 3 he has hit his parents and they would do nothing about it. Now he's getting close to his teens and he still hits her. But she will scold you if you say anything about it to him. As he gets older, at least it's less common now, but the damage will be worse. I was really young, maybe 6, and we lived next to a family of 6 that were very religious. Pentecostal, mom, dad, grandma and 3 kids, 11, 4 and 2. Sailor Moon was my favorite show at the time, so I had the wand, cassettes, movies, and all the kids would play pretend or come watch movies at my house. I had a no kid left behind policy, so I invited the 2 youngest of the family's kids over to watch with us. They went to ask, and about 10 minutes later the oldest brother comes out and says they won't be over and they're not allowed to watch Sailor Moon because she gets naked. I told him she doesn't, and he said when she's turning into SM her clothes come off and his mom says it's inappropriate. Needless to say, I was confused. He was talking about the in-between of outfits when she's covering the pink sheet. I couldn't and still can't understand why that was an issue, but to each I guess. Less than 3 months later the 4-year-old boy was caught in the tube of our park naked from the waist down on top of the 2-year who also lived on our street. They moved shortly after. My mom told me that Sailor Moon was P because of that sequence. It was years before I actually watched it. I was pretty freaking confused and had no idea what she thought was pornographic about it. I was not really a kid, but I was at a tutorial center which accommodated students from all ages. There was this kid of 8-9 years old who was cheerful, giggly, clever and smart and clingy. She also liked to steal stuff. She stole our things multiple times. One day she took my stationery, forgot exactly what it was. She lived just the next block, so we went there to get it back. Her mom listened to us, called her to living room, then in front of us started beating the kid with plastic coat hanger until it was broken into 3 parts. I was really mortified and really sorry. Poor kid screamed and cried, but mom went on despite our pleas to let it go. Now I think the kid's cheerful countenance and clinginess were probably a silent appeal to be close to someone who could prevent the beatings at home. And she stole things to get attention. I am still sorry until today. Back in the day, my older brother had this friend who was a weirdo. Like, my brother's a standard, cringy, annoying neckbird, so all of his friends were of a similar nature, but this kid was especially weird and creepy. My mom would take me along when she'd go to pick my brother up from his house after school, and I remember my mom insisting I stay put in the living room when she went to the kid's bedroom to collect my brother. It turned out it was because every inch of this guy's bedroom walls were plastered with hardcore pornography. He was in 8th grade, but his dad would buy him Hustler, Jugs, whatnot. I can see why my brother really liked hanging out with him. And the dad was very open about his own extensive pee collection. His dad was just an all-around mega creep. He was tall, rail thin, bald, wire-framed glasses, strangely pale, always clammy looking, and gave off the most uncomfortable vibes. The mother was jittery and nervous all the time, and it turned out the dad had an insane temper. There were holes in the walls around the house from him raging. He was probably hitting her, or, at the very least, intimidating the crap out of her. I remember my mom watched this kid's dad storm out of his car outside the middle school one day, pick his son up by the neck and start angrily hissing crap at him between clenched teeth in front of other parents and teachers. Apparently, nobody did jack crap. Typical of my town. Bunch of winners. My mom hated my brother hanging out with this kid and understandably did not want him going over his house. But she also knew he didn't have much in the way of friends, and she couldn't really stop him from going over there after school because she was working. Thinking of that family gives me the creeps. I went to a sleepover birthday party in high school for a girl I only semi-knew. We were cool but we weren't close. When I arrived I realized her family was pretty religious from the decor. Lots of crosses and word artwork about Jesus. etc. Not being from that background, it put me a little on edge about my behavior, not wanting to offend anyone. We're eating pizza for dinner with our parents and brother. There were probably only 2-3 other girls besides me. One of her parents says that they saw a girl from our school walking down the sidewalk when they were driving home a few days before. All the guests were like, "Oh yeah, Shelby. I don't really know her." The parents and brother proceeded to just completely tear this girl apart. They verbatim said the words W and S. They even went so far as to say something to the tune of "she'll get what she deserves." I was so incredibly uncomfortable because it was really freaking weird how petty and invested they were in talking crap about this girl. I felt like it was really inappropriate for parents to talk like that about one of our peers in front of us. All the guests were just kind of quiet and not contributing, and it eventually petered out, but I was on edge all night and I never went back. Now I wonder if they were talking about me. There was this kid on my baseball team in 5th grade who had 2 twin little brothers. The one little bro was really quiet and polite, the other was super loud and obnoxious. Turns out, the kid on my baseball team told me that the super loud, obnoxious twin brother has been caught sodomizing his quiet, polite twin brother on several occasions, and their parents didn't do anything about it. The twin brothers were younger than us. That's enough Reddit for one day. One of my best friends growing up was this kid named Michael. He was a chubby little guy who lived in my neighborhood, and we would always play N64 together and street hockey and build forts and stuff. Now, Michael was a rather spoiled kid. He was a huge copycat, and if you got a new toy or something, he would mysteriously get one too. The real WTF, though, was his family home dynamic. He had 2 older brothers, one of whom was adopted, and honestly I loved hanging out with them more than Michael. They were nicer, funnier, smarter, and had the same sense of humor as me. Michael used to invite me to his house to do stuff, and I would go hoping I'd get to hang out with his brothers too. The thing was, their parents treated the 2 other brothers like crap. I've seen them getting literally screamed at for things that weren't even wrong. They got slapped around and never got any kind of toys or play equipment like Michael did. They were also skinny as frick, like they were obviously not being fed like Michael was. It genuinely broke my heart to see the way they got treated, and I always felt like it was all I could do to be a good friend to them, because they didn't seem to have many of those either, and they were always so freaking chill and nice. I don't understand it at all. They didn't deserve it, and it makes me sad to this day. I wish I had some way of finding them and seeing how they are doing. I hope they're happier now and in a better situation. Also, I spent the night at their house once, in Michael's room, and I got scabies from the sheets they gave me. I didn't know Harry Potter had a brother. I went to my mate's house back in the summer of '79 to play some baseball. Well, he went in to grab some food for himself before we started and accidentally dropped the glass milk bottle on the ground. Not even 5 seconds later, his dad comes up to him and starts beating the absolute crap out of him. Halfway through the beatdown, he looks directly at me standing outside peering through the window and gives me the most murderous look ever. We never played baseball that day. He went to school a few days later and had 2 black eyes and a broken jaw over spilt milk. 38 years later and I'm still best friends with him. He cut out all contact with his family and doesn't talk to them at all anymore. I'm glad he cut ties with his family. It really sucks when the people who are supposed to take care of you and support you do the exact opposite. At a friend's house for a sleepover, I answered a yes or no question with yeah and was told by the mother that was rude and inappropriate. I was told I had to write yes on a piece of paper 100 times or go home. I thought she was joking, so I did that little polite smile laugh and said sorry. She dialed my mom's number, handed me the phone, and told me to tell her I was going home and why. I was dumbfounded at the time, but now I think it's pretty funny. Who does that? Poor friend. My best friend from 1st grade until we went to different schools for middle school was Joe. He was nice. His parents drove new trucks, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The first and only time I went to his home, it was in a nice area, although it was freestanding, not part of a community. The home was a dump. Paint faded and chipped, part of the gutter broken and dangling off the side of the house, and some major cracks. The lawn was a mess as well. Inside, Things were dusty and smelly and there were a lot of insects. Ants and cockroaches were crawling around everywhere during broad daylight. I try my best to ignore things while we play video games in the living room. When it's time to finally go to sleep, we go to Joe's room and the first thing I notice is cobwebs on the ceiling corners near the bed. I hate spiders, so I'm already freaked out. I go to get a closer look hoping that there's no spiders and instead I see a dang black widow. I ask Joe if he has bug spray around and he says no and not to worry. The spiders, plural, which freaked me out further, don't bite. Then I swear to God, he points at the black widow in the corner and says, "That's Matilda. She's nice. I didn't sleep much that night. I don't understand how people live in such conditions." His dad owned his own small construction company and his mother was an accountant. They definitely had money, so I don't know why they wouldn't clean up and fix up their home. Holy frick, that part with the black widow. I was having some issues at home when I was about 13 or 14 and a girl from school, Tracy, who I didn't know all that well, offered for me to stay with her. She told me we could live with her dad and talked about how cool he was, etc. So we go to meet up with her dad. He's a very large guy with a bunch of badly done tattoos and the remnants of a greasy looking mullet. He's thinning badly on top. He's wearing jeans and a leather vest and to be honest he looks pretty dodgy, but he has a stylish, pretty girlfriend with him who seems nice, which kind of appeased me. We get in his car and drive to some house that Tracy has apparently just been kicked out of. I'm told to wait in the car with her dad while Tracy and the dad's girlfriend go inside to collect Tracy's clothes. So I'm sitting in the car with good old dad, who is watching me in the rearview mirror. He starts asking me a bunch of questions about school etc. and leads up to asking me if I have a boyfriend. I was getting really uncomfortable with the conversation, which he seems to be enjoying. He's stopped watching me in the mirror and is turned around to face the back seat. He's licking his lips and grinning a seedy grin, and he's asking me if I'm a virgin. I didn't know what to say, but something in me told me to say no, so I did. He seems irritated by this and turns back to face the front just as Tracy and his girlfriend come back. We drive for a while and I realize we're going out of town. We eventually end up on a rural property surrounded by bush. The house has seen far better days. By this time it's dark. We go inside and Tracy's dad brings out a huge pickle jar full of weed and gives it to Tracy and I. He offers us cask wine and he and his girlfriend disappear. I haven't eaten, and I'm not at all comfortable, so I barely smoke anything. I'm nervous and don't feel safe. Tracy gets off her face and we eventually fall asleep on the couch in the lounge room. The next day I go for a drive into town with the girlfriend and hightail it to find somewhere else to stay. Pretty dodgy, but no harm, no foul, right? Turns out though, Tracy's dad isn't her dad. He's her mum's ex-boyfriend. Her mum is in Gale, who is a cook and the main supplier for the town I grew up in. He and his girlfriend run a side business where they bring young girls back to their place, get them fricked up on drugs and alcohol, then film them in threesome situations with the dad and girlfriend, which they sell. I don't know if things would have gone differently if I'd had the wine or smoked more pot. I do know that a girl from school who was 2 years above me ended up in one of their films that year. A dad of a friend always slapped my friend's and his wife's butt, making lewd comments about his Little Women and how she, my friend, had grown up so much. You could always tell she was embarrassed. Her dad was a regular alcoholic and I more than once asked my friend if he ever abused her, although she'd always swear he never went that far. Her parents later divorced when her dad developed serious Korsakoff syndrome, at which point he'd no longer tend to his hygiene unless told to, and all he did was sit at the table all day with a mug of stale coffee and yesterday's newspaper. Kind of sad but ironic. She has no contact with him anymore, I think. Korsakoff syndrome is a chronic memory disorder caused by severe deficiency of thiamine, vitamin B1. Korsakoff syndrome is most commonly caused by alcohol misuse, but certain other conditions also can cause the syndrome. I had a close friend when I was in elementary and middle school who grew up in an organized crime family. They were well off, lived in a very nice home and neighborhood, but inside those walls it was often intense. Usually exactly what you could imagine a mafia family was like, and sometimes quite comical. Everything about his parents, and the rest of his family that I met, was a stereotype. His dad was a larger-than-life character who was loud, funny, scary and boisterous. He would always have people stop over to drop off paperwork and he would hug them, kiss them on the cheek and take them into the garage for about 2 minutes before they left. His mom had huge hair, a ton of makeup, was always pee off about something, and was cooking constantly. She was a great cook. He also had an uncle with a great nickname. My friend always called him Uncle Peppy, but I would hear his dad call him Joey Pepperoni all the time. He also loved to say forget about it. That family was so fun and so close. I used to be jealous of how cool his family was. Every time I was there something interesting happened. It was like a sitcom in their house. I still talk to him on occasion. His father passed away about 10 years ago and his mom moved to Tampa and bought a condo. Not sure about Uncle Peppy. I'll have to ask him next time we talk. He would always have people stop over to drop off paperwork and he would hug them, kiss them on the cheek and take them into the garage for about 2 minutes before they left. Oh goodness, I wonder what happened in those 2 minutes. I thought of another one. It didn't happen completely in the home and more WTF than totally creepy, but I just got a share. As a middle high schooler I was very into concerts and shows. My close friends were too. We wanted to see a band play at the House of Blues in Atlantic City, now closed. I lived over 200 miles away, so it was basically not happening, seeing as how my friends and I were 14. My friends, I'll call her Michelle, parents barely knew me because of a language barrier. Plus they both worked 2 jobs and were never home. For some strange reason, unbeknownst to me at that time, they offered to take us. How cool, we thought. Us also included Michelle's 9-year-old sister, who forgot her freaking shoes, and a friend of mine, call her Jessica, who met Michelle just once. The parents never met her. Fast forward, concert was fun. The parents let us roam around AC all night, which was extremely sketchy and dangerous. Parents never even checked up on us, not even for the 9-year-old's sake. Anyway, next day is time to leave. We were supposed to leave at 9 AM. We didn't end up leaving until 11 PM. My parents and Jessica's parents grew more and more worried, especially because they couldn't get a hold of Michelle's parents. Here's where it gets weird. Turns out the parents took us to AC willingly because they had a severe gambling problem. They spent hours in casinos and we tried to walk in to ask when we were leaving, what's the plan, can you talk to our parents to ease their worries, etc. But of course we were immediately kicked out and got no answers. When either parent wanted to go to a different casino they literally ran so we couldn't catch them and ask what was going on. They dodged every call from their kid, even ignored texts from Michelle and the little sister asking for money for food. Through all of this, I overheard something about the mom owing a guy money and the dad getting money from someone, so we couldn't leave until then. Michelle didn't question virtually anything. I thought we would spend another night and miss school the next day. Finally, got home late that night. My parents were so mad. These parents put us in these questionable situations. Needless to say, we spent time at my house from then on. TLDR. 14-year-old me went to Atlantic City for a concert with friends and her parents. They let us roam around the city alone, while they fed their gambling addiction and other sketchy crap, and I had no idea when I'd ever get home. There was a kid in my neighborhood that none of the dogs liked. Every time he would walk around the block, every dog in the neighborhood would go nuts and bark like crazy at the guy. One day he borrowed a baseball bat from a neighbor and went back home and murdered his father with it. After he went to jail, his little brother took up walking around the block, and guess what? None of the dogs liked him either. A kid in my neighborhood that none of the dogs liked. Alright, I mean, weird but okay. One day he borrowed a baseball bat from a neighbor and went back home and murdered his father with it. What the frick? My best friend growing up was one of 4 kids being raised by their single mom. They were in 5th, 6th, 8th, and 10th grades when I met them. Their apartment was always disgusting, and the mom would leave $20 for food and disappear for a couple of days on a regular basis. My friend essentially lived at my house once we got close. One time, I did their mom's laundry because her pile of clothes took up every square inch of floor space in the hallway and master bedroom. We found over $100 in loose pocket change. Mom was a bartender, so it was common to find bills and not just change, and went grocery shopping for them, probably the first time that house had seen a vegetable. She called the cops on me for stealing that money, saying that she had plans to use it for a family vacation. The responding officer shook my hand and said he'd have done the same thing and left. Ah, memories. The responding officer shook my hand and said he'd have done the same thing and left. Ahahaha, what an awesome cop. Glad he was good about it. Well, I can't speak for other kids, but I'll never forget as a kid, during one of the few coherent moments my mom had between abusing painkillers and other medical supplements, she just out of nowhere said, "Me and your uncles did some bad stuff back in the day. When we were kids, your granddad made us do it." I was like, "What stuff?" "We broke into houses, robbed, beat people up, stole vehicles," and I was like, "But you never killed anyone, right?" She kind of got this far off look in her eye and just goes, "I'm going to change the subject." Okay. I was 10. Certain questions never really got answered. I spent one summer during elementary school at a friend's house because her mom was available to watch us, as well as a few other girls. A makeshift daycare, and I know my parents paid this woman to watch me. By watch us I mean stay locked in her bedroom while we kids ran around the whole house and neighborhood doing whatever we wanted. I saw this woman so little that I have no recollection of her, only the house and my friends. One day we were exploring the dad's study and a kid found a handgun and stash of bullets in a closet. They pulled it out and were playing with it, and I remember I noped the frick out of the room so fast. Thankfully nothing bad happened. For reference, this is why it's important to teach kids age-appropriate gun safety. In this case, the NRA's Eddie Eagle program has some good basic instructions. Stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. I had a friend who lived down the street, and I would always go play with her and her two sisters. The mother was a piece of work. On Saturdays they would have to do chores the whole morning, which I would end up helping with when I slept over there. The mother basically told me that if I wanted to sleep over there I had to do chores too. I found out later that I was the only friend she said this to. Freaking B. Among other things, this one time in particular, my friend had taken out a backpack to put things in to play with in the backyard. Thought it was completely okay. Turns out the mom didn't want her using the backpack till the school year started, which neither she or I knew. So the mom comes out back and starts screaming at her, pulling the backpack away from her. My friend is in tears and starts running, trying to catch up with her mom, who is now charging inside with the backpack. She was saying sorry while running, and when she gets close, her mom turns around and freaking back kicks my friend in the stomach and then yells at me to go home. All this over a Backstreet Boys backpack. There was so much fricked up crap in that house. One of my childhood friend's house was so dirty. Kitchen was always greasy and never any clean dishes. Den was always covered in clothes, not sure if they were clean or dirty. Kids' bedrooms were always a mess and the parents' bedroom was trashed. Biggest thing to me was how all they ever drank was soda, never any water. One of my friends in primary school seemed overly attached to her brother. She'd go on about how hot she thought he was, tell me that it was okay to fancy him. Really weird. He wasn't hot either. Based on my knowledge of primary school children, I'm gonna guess her brother had a crush on you and she was trying to be a good sister. But some people just end up crushing on their siblings, so who knows. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.